We are live and on. How are you?
Well, I'm confused, but that's okay. That's kind of a perpetual state for me, being confused. I'm sorry we're late. I'm really sorry about that.
Oh, no problem, no problem. All right, let's jump right into it. Okay, so the
Okay.
brown hair, the brown-eyed, blue-eyed experiment. How did you start that experiment?
I learned that from Adolf Hitler. One of the ways he decided who went into the gas chamber during what has come to be called the Holocaust was eye color. If you had a good German name, but you had brown eyes, they threw you into the gas chamber because they thought you might be a Jewish person who was trying to pass. And they killed hundreds of thousands of people on the basis of eye color alone. I started it the day after Martin Luther King Jr. was killed because our lesson plan for the next day was to learn the Sioux Indian prayer that says, "Oh, great spirit, keep me from ever judging a man until I've walked a mile in his moccasins." I decided that not only was I going to teach my students that prayer, I was going to arrange to have it answered for them. I decided I would do what we do in this society on a daily basis. I would pick out a group of people on the basis of a physical characteristic over which they have absolutely no control. I would assign negative characteristics to them because of that physical characteristic. I would lower my expectations of them. I would force them to live down to my expectations of them. And when they did, I would see, you all you people are like that. And it's because of that physical characteristic. Now that's how racism works. And that's how the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise works. It isn't an experiment. I don't experiment with students. That was an exercise in empathy to teach them how to empathize with those who are different from themselves. If what I do when I create a microcosm of society in my third grade classroom is an experiment, then what we have been doing in the United States of America for over 300 years is an experiment to teach people of color what their place is in this country. If that is what we're doing, it's illegal, it's indecent, it's immoral, and it's unethical, and we ought to put a stop to it. I don't think what we're doing is an experiment. I think it's what we pale faces think is a way of life that we deserve, because we have been lied to about the number of races there are on the face of the earth, and there's only one. You and I are members of the same race, the human race.
Right.
There's only one race of people on the face of the earth. Human beings come in different sizes and shapes and colors and genders and gender orientations and ages, but we all are the same race, the human race. I can't say that often enough. I will shout it from my grave. I will come back and say, there's only one race on the face of the earth. Make no mistake about this.
Right. And Jane, you have been active in this for the last 50 years. Have you faced any type of backlash for your stance that you've taken on this?
Well, you see, right now we're trying this social distancing. I have had social distancing for 52 years because nobody would have anything to do with me after they found out that I was an N-word lover. Now, I don't mind being called an N-word lover. That's much better than being called an N-word hater.
Right.
I happen to think it's more important to love one another than it is to pick out people to hate based on our ignorance about skin color. Yes, I've been almost totally isolated. The teachers wouldn't speak to me in the building because it wasn't good politics to be seen talking to the N-word lover. The townspeople, 80% of the townspeople were quietly in favor of what I did because I was a good teacher. I could teach any child to read, but they had to get along with that other 22%, which I call the lunatic fringe. And I've had parents come to me after I left Riceville and after I quit teaching and say to me, "I'm sorry for not sticking up for you when you did that exercise in your classroom. You did the right thing, and I'm glad my children had you for a teacher." But I couldn't do anything about it. And I said, wait, you don't have to apologize. You did what you had to do to get along in that community. I didn't have to get along in that community because I moved out. I kept my children in. I kept on teaching there, but I got my children out of there because a teacher, the principal's wife, told me at a teacher's meeting, "Jane, you better get your kids out of this school. These teachers are trying to destroy your children." Wow. So I got my kids out and I kept right on teaching there. And then parents apologized to me for not sticking up for me. They didn't have to stick up for me. I was doing what was right, and they didn't have to suffer from sticking up for what was right. That was their problem, not mine.
Right. And Jane, there are guys. We're here with Jane Elliott on the Kulture Show on Black Pharaoh Radio, and Jane, there are guys like myself. There are guys like Sheka Enti Diop who spoke about this in the '60s about the miseducation of African history being somewhat diluted only to slavery. Can you speak on that? The Nile Valley civilization, is that important for not just blacks, but for all children to learn the African history that has to do with us?
Yep. Yes, because we all are descendants of those first modern human beings that evolved in sub-Saharan Africa between 300,000 and 500,000 years ago. And if every person in the world, if we would trace our DNA back as far as we could trace it, we would find that a percentage of that DNA came from a country in Africa. So it's absolutely essential that we learn the whole history of people of color instead of just that starting with slavery. If you have read Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization, then you have to realize that blacks were doing remarkable things in the Nile Valley, which is in Egypt, which is a country in Africa. We have managed to move it into the Middle East. It isn't, it is a country in Africa. And they were doing things, remarkable things, 4,000 years before the birth of Jesus Christ. Now, if we're going to teach the truth of history, we have to give more than 20 days a year in the classroom, which means 20, maybe half hours, to Black history. We have to start telling the truth to children from the moment they're born. We have to encourage them to realize that we are all members of the same race. And I'll never forget, oh my God, I wasn't there when she said it, but I did a workshop, I did the exercise with a group of people in London. And unbeknownst to me, one of the blue-eyed people during the lunch hour said to her group, "I'm not a racist, but I've been a teacher for 20 years, and one of our little girls got cut on the playground one day, and I went out to help. And I was surprised to see that she's pink under the skin, just like the rest of us." I didn't realize that had been said. It was that was part of the program. And when I saw that, I thought, oh my God, if I had just heard that, think of the difference we could have made in that fool's behavior. But right. She was one of the ones who was just furious at what happened to her during that exercise and wasn't a bit uncomfortable saying that she was surprised to see that her Black student was pink under the skin, just like the rest of us. Mm-hmm. That is one of the most ignorant, most racist, most ridiculous, most non-Christian, if you're talking about Christianity, one of the most non-Christian statements I had ever heard.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you hear about, you said you heard about when the death of Dr. Martin Luther King. Now, Malcolm X, Dr. King, all these civil rights leaders, like you see what's going on today with the death of George Floyd. Do you see that George Floyd's death has been more broadened and has affected people more than Dr. Martin Luther King's and Malcolm X's death?
Well, you see, now we saw it as it happened. And unfortunately, and I'm glad that white people, pale faces now, realize that people of color aren't lying when they say what's happening to them. They can't say, I didn't know that, because it has been on television for the last 3 weeks. Unfortunately, it has been on television over and over and over and over, every 20 minutes, every 30 minutes, every hour, every 2 hours, all day for about 3 weeks. It's time to stop showing that particular part of that ignorance, because Black man who hasn't done anything wrong, but he gets in the crosshairs of the police department. That, I think, it looks to me like me, and I see things in a way that's different from many other people. I realize that. But that, it seems to me, is attempted intimidation. That's an attempt by the people who have the power to say to young Black boys and their mothers, be careful, because if you get out of line, this is what can happen to you. And then I watched the shooting of that man that overthrew 2 white policemen, got away and disarmed one of them in the act, and got away. He hadn't done anything wrong yet, but he didn't want to go in the police car in shackles because he knew what might happen to him on the way to the cop shop. Right. So he got away. But the young man who shot him, imagine what was in his mind when he pulled his gun out and instead of tasering him, shot him in the back twice. You know what he's thinking. I'll teach you for overpowering two white males. I'll teach you better than to do that in the future. For the love of God, think about what he did.
Right.
That is absolute murder out of anger and out of losing his feeling of being on top.
Right.
If one black male can overpower two white policemen and disarm one of them and run away, instead of turning the taser on the cops, he ran. He didn't want to hurt them. He just wanted not to be hurt himself. And so they shot him. Now, maybe I'm misreading this whole situation, but the fact that he didn't turn the taser on those two men, one of whom was on the ground and the other was trying to get up, tells you something about, do we want to get even or do we want to just get away?
And Dr. Elliott, what do you feel white America fears about African Americans? Really only caused feeling white America that they have about African American males particularly.
White Americans do what they're doing for the same reason that young black males sell drugs. Racism is a money-making situation in this country. Right. And white Americans can keep on making money off it as long as we perpetuate the myth of several different races and the myth of white superiority. We accuse black males of doing a terrible thing in that they're breaking the law. We just let out of prison 3 men who were found guilty of breaking the law, but they're good friends of our president, and so they are now on house arrest. And we've got thousands of young black males who are in jail because of Bill Clinton's 3 strikes, you're out. Right. Now, you want to talk about drug dealing, or do you want to talk about what we have done imprisoning people because there is money in the prison system?
Right. What can we do to get white America to understand Black tears, all the issues that have happened in this country to African Americans? What could we do to change that?
You can re-educate the educators. We have to re-educate the educators, and we have to re-educate people who think that things like segregation in this country are because of people not wanting to be around those who are different from themselves. Read this book and then realize that the reason laws were written to segregate people is because the people who wrote the laws believed in the myth of several different races. You teachers believe in the myth of several different races. They have been miseducated. We have to re-educate this society. We have to educate people to the fact that this is a fact, that we are all members of the same race. Human beings come in different sizes, different shapes, different colors, different genders, different gender orientations, different ages, different religions, different cultures, but we are all members of the same race. If people become convinced of that, you aren't going to have corporations like Walmart that can hire people for lower wages than they hire other people, for which they hire other people, can work them for less than 40 hours a week so that they don't have to pay any benefits or any insurance, and can change employees at will because they don't have a union. Right. Racism is a very lucrative business. You're not going to change it until you re-educate people, and we have to re-educate little black children to realize that what their mothers have been telling them is right. They are as good as my dad used to say to us, you're as good as the best, but no better than the rest. Right. And that's the way it is. The black children are as good as the best, but no better than the rest. And that is what I think black mothers are telling their children that. And then they send them to school. And then the teacher tells them something totally different from that because of the ignorance of the teacher where race is concerned. Teachers have learned the same lesson that children have learned, and that is that there are 2 or 3 or 4 different races. Until we re-educate the educators, we'll continue to have these ugly problems.
Right. And my last question is on Nile Valley civilization. Why has ancient Egypt been whitewashed or westernized?
Because we can't admit that all those wonderful things that we got from Egypt came from black people. If you admit that, then you cannot continue to support the myth of white superiority. So we simply move Egypt into the Middle East so that we don't have to admit that we got all those wonderful things from Black people. When I pull up this, I see I've been with this too long. I don't know how Black mothers stand it. My heroes are Black women because they keep on keeping on no matter what we do to them. But I pulled up to a stop sign just not too long ago, and there's a big trucker beside me because he's in a hurry. He's on schedule. He's got to move. And I looked up at him and I grinned, and he looked at me, and I know he was thinking, she thinks I'm cute, she admires my truck. No, I was thinking, you fool, if you were aware, if you knew that your behavior right now is being controlled by the invention of a Black man, which was the stoplight, you'd run this light. And I started to laugh because it was so ridiculous. And then I stopped laughing. I thought, oh my God, that stoplight is an analogy for this country. Green means go for white folks. Green means go. Red is for Black folks, stop. Yellow means wait. That's what we're saying to Native Americans. And you look at, now I can't look at a stoplight without thinking, Jane, you're doing it again. But in this country, we are living with a stoplight. Green for go for whites. Red means stop for Blacks, and yellow means wait for Native Americans, while they are dying in unbelievable numbers on Navajo reservations in this country because of COVID-19.
Dr. Elliott, we were grateful to have you on the show, and we know you got another show, so we're not going to keep you. Thank you so much, and I'll be in touch with you because I have a new children's book coming out soon, and I'll send you that one as well.
Great. I'd like to see that. I'd very much like to see that because I have two great-grandchildren. One is adopted and he's half Hispanic. And I have a grandson who is married to a Black woman and they want children. And I have a daughter who is married to a Saudi Arabian. So I'm going to have a mosaic family. Finally, I am absolutely tickled to death that my kids are living and acting upon what they learned from their parents. Like you and I, is a descendant of the first Black people who evolved on this earth. We all have to get rid of the idea of Caucasian.
Yes.
That's one of the ways we dignify racism. Don't do it. Don't use that phrase anymore. Just if you want to say she's part Italian and part whatever else she is. No, just say she's Italian. That's a wonderful thing to be. Right. Mamma mia, that's a wonderful thing to be.
Thank you, Dr. Elliott. Thank you, Dr. Elliott, for being on the Kulture Show and the Black Pharaoh Radio. We greatly appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. Goodbye.
Bye. My dear friend, educator and anti-racist activist Jane Elliott once said, "We've been lied to about the number of races there are in the world, when in fact that there is one race, the human race, that sprouted out of Africa thousands of years ago." Well, if you don't believe Jane, Kaba Kabane says, "For one to deny their African origin is like a fish saying, 'I live, but not in water.'" And that fish is saying that while he's in the water. Imagine that. But what if we don't believe Kaba or Jane? Well, Professor Louis Leakey
Upon searching for the origins of humanity, he didn't stay very long in Europe, Asia, or America. He found himself in the Horn of Africa, where he claimed to find the first human remains. This has led to what they call the out of Africa theory. This is widely accepted in biology, science, and evolution. But what if you're like me and you don't believe in evolution? Well, the Bible tells us in the book of Genesis, the book of Exodus, and confirmed in the book of Daniel that ancient Egypt was the first world power and the first mega civilization. So whether you believe in science, biology, evolution, or creation, all roads lead back to Africa as the origin.